Hello, and welcome to this week's live weekly warm-up. This one is a really powerful exercise that I haven't done too much actually in my own practicing before. I've never really consciously thought about it, but I was thinking of an exercise to do for this week. And when I sort of put what I'm about to tell you about into words or into context and consciously thought about it, I realized that it's really powerful and might make a big difference in all of your technical playing. So I'm really excited if you're here watching this one, and I think it's going to make a big difference. So what we're going to be doing today is grouping major scales. So we've played scales before on the live weekly warm-up. I'm sure that you've played some form of scales before, but what I'm going to be talking about today is the rhythms that I like to do, my favorite kind of rhythms, and why those are my favorite way to do the rhythms, and a sort of grouping method that you can do to split up your scales so that you can learn the tricky keys more easily, so that you can play more musically, and so that you can always be leading and grouping your scales and all the technical stuff that you play appropriately. And in my opinion, when you have really good groupings determined and you can lock into that rhythm and the steadiness of the notes, it makes a world of difference in how clean your technique comes across and how effortlessly and clearly you're able to play. So I hope you're looking forward to this one. So without further ado, let me talk about what it actually is. So it's really simple. It's just playing a scale. I'm going to just demonstrate it 1 octave because that's all you need to get the point. But you can do this 2 octaves, 3 octaves. It all works the same. And what it comes down to is how you play the rhythms and how you conceptualize the rhythms. So the rhythm that it's going to be for your scale is a quarter note on the tonic note, so the root note. So if it's a C major scale, the C will be a quarter note. Every single C will be a quarter note. And then everything else is eighth notes. You could also think about it as the tonic notes being an eighth note and everything else being 16th notes. It doesn't matter. I'll do quarter and eighth notes because I think that's a little bit easier to conceptualize. So it'll end up being 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1. And that's your whole scale with the rhythm. Now, the secret, the trick that's going to make this so much more meaningful and more powerful is how you actually conceptualize that and think of the groupings. So in classical music, the most standard kind of grouping is to lead to beat 1 and lead to beat 3. Those are sort of our anchor beats. That's where the interesting, exciting musical stuff happens. So those are the beats that we want to be going towards for the most part. Now, that's not always true. Sometimes music's a little different. Jazz is a little different. But for the most part, that's how it works. So we're going to do that here. And you can see how it kind of lends itself to doing that, where we have 1, 2, and 3. We're leading to beat 3. And then we go on up to beat 1, and 4, and 1. And by separating it in 2 halves like that, first of all, it gives you a little bit more to chew on, a little bit more to grab onto so that you aren't having fast note freak out and just running through the scale haphazardly. And it also makes it easier to learn because you're only dealing with a few notes at a time rather than all the notes. This is particularly effective on the trickier keys as you're trying to learn those. One other benefit that I want to mention before I forget too is that second half, and 4, and 1, is actually the same 4 notes of a different key. So when you practice this way, you're practicing 2 chunks of one scale, but you're almost getting 1 chunk of one scale and a chunk in a different key as well in your fingers, so that when you go to that different key, you'll be more familiar with it at least. So let me go ahead and demonstrate how this will end up sounding. You'll end up stopping on the 4th note and then picking it up on the 5th note when we separate it into these 2 groups of 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, like this. So that's the first group, and then the second group goes on after that. So those are just the two groups. And the beauty of splitting it up into small groups is it allows you to do lots of repetitions in a short amount of time because you're playing less notes. So you can play just that first half of the scale. And when you do that, you get lots and lots of repetitions on just those 4 notes. Then you can do the second half, and 4 and 1. And then you end up getting a ton of repetitions on that as well. You can also do this going down. And it's really important as you're doing these repetitions that you're always thinking of the rhythm, whether it's 1, 2, and 3, 1, 2, and 3, or and 4 and 1, and 4 and 1, and 4 and 1, and 4 and 1, because that's going to build the rhythm into your muscle memory along with the fingers into your muscle memory. So when you go to put it together, it just automatically flows. And it basically allows you to program the rhythm and the fingers and the notes all together into one. So all you have to do is think 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1. And your fingers will automatically go where they need to go to play the right notes. You'll be in control the whole time. You'll be keeping track of everything. And it'll sound musical because you're leading to the appropriate beats. And that's what will allow you to play all of your scales in a very controlled manner where you can hear all the notes no matter what key you're in. And you can be in control rather than not being so confident about the notes, being afraid or worried, and having that fast note freak out where it just becomes mush. We all have played scales like that in the past, or maybe you play your scales like that now where you're not totally confident where you're going. It's a little mushy. It's not clear. This grouping thing will help with that. So just always split your scales up as needed. Some of you may be able to know your scales well enough already that you can just go straight through and just think about this grouping and it'll make things better. For other people, and especially as you're learning harder keys, you may have to split it up into the 2 groups. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's beneficial. It'll make you learn those notes even better. I highly encourage that. So next time you're playing your scales, don't just sort of mindlessly let your fingers wander and hope that your fingers land in the right place. Try this out and see if you can think about the rhythm, connect the fingers with the rhythm, have this musical grouping leading to beats 1 and 3, and see what that does for you. So if you have any questions about this, leave a comment below. Even if you're watching this not live, you can leave a comment later and I'll be sure to answer it. And I'll see you next week on the next live weekly warm-up. Good luck with grouping your scales this week.